Good afternoon, everyone, or I'm sorry, good morning, still morning. Thank you so much for joining NC Counts Coalition, as well as our partners for a virtual press conference. As we meet with you today, our state and our communities are feeling the impact of COVID-19. North Carolinians are feeling a sense of uncertainty. Businesses are suffering, schools are closed, everything is canceled, and unemployment is at an all-time high. This is indeed an extraordinary time, but it is during extraordinary times that our communities rally together, uplift each other, and support one another. Everyone is looking for a way to help during the pandemic, whether it be by sewing masks to donate to hospitals, giving those on the front line a free cup of coffee, or staying at home and practicing social distancing to protect the health of others in our communities. Well, today, in this virtual press conference, we are going to share with you one more way that every North Carolinian can help, which is to participate in the 2020 census. Help North Carolina achieve a complete and accurate count. Achieving a complete and accurate census count is not an easy task, and far too often individuals are excluded, missed, or undercounted from the census. In 2010, the census missed 2.1% of Black people, 1.5% of Latinos, 1.1% of renters, and a whopping 4.6% of young children between the ages of 0 to 4. The current pandemic is shedding light on how government operates and how vital services are that government provides. The same communities that are often missed from the census, our Black communities, our communities of color, our rural communities, and young children, are the same communities that are more likely to feel the impact of a down economy and reduced services. As we bounce back post-coronavirus, we are going to need accurate census data to ensure that North Carolina receives its fair share of $1.5 trillion in federal funds that will support programs and services for healthy families and vibrant communities. Just think, there's a family at home right now where mom or dad is not working, and they may need federal food assistance through SNAP or WIC to help make ends meet. In fiscal year of 2016, North Carolina received $2.2 billion in census-guided funding to support SNAP program and $203 million in census-guided funding for WIC programs. How will that family keep a roof over their head? They may need affordable housing assistance. In fiscal year 2016, North Carolina received $370 million in census-guided funding to support housing assistance programs. Right now, there are thousands of North Carolina students in danger of going hungry while public schools are closed as a result of this pandemic. In fiscal year 2016, North Carolina received $516 million a year in census-guided funding for school lunch and breakfast programs. Right now, our healthcare system is stretched and over its capacity. Healthcare professionals are working day in and day out to save our loved ones. Medical clinics in rural communities are rolling up their sleeves to make sure that everyone has access to medical services. And unfortunately, someone is ignoring their health and their symptoms for sickness because they don't have health insurance and they are not in a place to take on a bill for healthcare. In fiscal year 2016, North Carolina received $11.1 billion to support healthcare services and programs such as Medicaid, Medicare, the Children's Health Insurance Program, and community health centers. In fiscal year 2016, North Carolina received $23.8 billion in census-guided funding. That's a little bit more than $1,600 per person in our state to support school lunches for North Carolina's children, to support medication for our seniors, to support affordable housing for North Carolina residents, and to support federal Pell Grants for North Carolina colleges and universities, and for better and safer roads for North Carolina communities, and more. The census touches our communities in so many ways, and a complete and accurate count is essential to support the economic and general well-being of every North Carolinian. We will not allow the coronavirus to overshadow one of the most important civic engagement operations of our democracy. We cannot afford an inaccurate count. The coronavirus, of course, has caused disruption in North Carolina's strategy, which focuses on NC Counts Coalition strategy, which focuses on community engagement through community events and personal contact. But As we practice social distancing and washing our hands and protecting one another's health, NC Counts Coalition and our partners continue to push forward, advocate, and uplift the census with our communities. Here are a few examples of what some of our partners are doing. NALEO Educational Fund has released a digital toolkit for community partners with guidance on online outreach. El Pueblo is mailing 16,000 postcards to households across the state to remind residents to be counted during the census self-response period. Cumberland Disaster Recovery Coalition is adding a 2020 census flyer and food packages that they are delivering to the elderly, disabled, and others who need food security during the pandemic. North Carolina Asian Americans Together are mailing out pledge cards to remind community members who pledged earlier in the year that they would be counted, that it is now time to count. Colleges and universities, including our state's HBCUs, continue to advocate for students to be counted in the 2020 census, and Census Fellows continue to promote the census through fun TikTok videos and online community forums. My Black Counts NC is hosting a social media challenge with prizes that will support Black-owned businesses and organizations that will be impacted by COVID-19. North Carolina A. Philip Randolph Institute has created countless memes that they post daily to remind communities to respond to the census while offering all of us a little bit of humor to get through our days. A Better Chance, a Better Community in Enfield, North Carolina will be hosting virtual parties, including a virtual after party that's going to take place after our virtual party that's today at 12 o'clock. And this is going to target Halifax and Northampton County. Our commitment remains strong to get our communities counted. And once we return to some normalcy, you better believe that NC Counts, we're going to strap on our boots, hit the pavement, and continue to work to make NC count. It is now my pleasure to turn our program over to our esteemed partners who will share with you the current state of the census and the awesome work taking place across North Carolina. Unfortunately, Secretary Michelle Sanders, who was scheduled to be a part of our press conference today, had an urgent matter that she had to take care of and is not able to join us. However, she gave me 3 points that she wanted to make sure that I mentioned. One is she shared with me, if you could see this, an official proclamation signed by Governor Roy Cooper acknowledging today as Census Day, and I'd like to take a minute to read it to you all. Whereas the 2020 census counts the population in the United States and 5 United States territories, Article 1, Section 2 of the United States Constitution mandates that a complete count of the nation's population be counted every 10 years. And whereas census data will determine where the federal government distributes more than $800 billion in funding, with an estimated $16 billion allocated for North Carolina. And whereas census data supports funding for community programs and services, as well as critical economic development and infrastructure, including housing, roads, public transportation, parks, schools, and more. And whereas census data ensures fair congressional representation in the United States House of Representatives and redistricting state legislatures, with North Carolina predicted to gain an additional congressional seat after the 2020 census. And whereas individual data collected by the census is confidential and protected for 72 years and cannot be shared with service providers, other government agencies, or law enforcement. And whereas the North Carolina Complete Count Commission has worked statewide with census partners, including NC Counts, to raise awareness for the importance of a complete and accurate census count, to provide educational resources to all residents, and to reach historically hard to count populations, including young children, low-income individuals, military personnel, non-native English speakers, minorities, and rural residents. And whereas the 2020 census questionnaire may be completed online using any mobile device or wherever internet access is available, or by phone or mail, with support offered in more than 50 languages. And whereas it is important that every person living in North Carolina has a voice and is counted regardless of age, race, citizenship, voter registration, religion, place of residence, or family status. Now, therefore, I, Roy Cooper, Governor of the state of North Carolina, do hereby proclaim April 1st, 2020 as Census Day in North Carolina and commend its observance to all citizens. So thank you, Governor Roy Cooper, for this awesome proclamation. And Secretary Sanders wanted me to wish everyone a very happy Census Day, and also wanted to encourage everyone to visit census.nc.gov for more information, as well as you could follow the state at NC Census on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And for all of us who are at home and who need a little break from pandemic news, check out Focus on TV, NC Census, UNC TV's panel discussion on North Carolina and the 2020 census, which airs tomorrow, I'm sorry, not today, tomorrow at 7 p.m. So thank you so much, Secretary Sanders, and to her staff for continuing their awesome work and for uplifting the census. And even though you couldn't be here with us today, we know that you are with us in spirits and that you are celebrating Census Day wherever you are. So with that, I would like to move to the next person on our agenda, which is Brandy Bynum.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be a part of today's program and to represent the North Carolina Rule Center. So good morning, everyone from all across the state. Again, I'm Brandy Bynum Dawson, Director of Advocacy with the North Carolina Rule Center. We are thankful and grateful to be a partner with the NC Counts Coalition and other local and state partners on this very important endeavor to get out the count here in North Carolina. For more than 30 years, the North Carolina Rule Center has worked to improve the quality of life for the state's rural people and places. We operate with the core belief that our rural communities have inherent cultural value and are vital to the overall economic health of our state. We recognize that the changing landscape of rural North Carolina bring with it challenges as well as opportunities. We also believe in the resiliency of our state's rural people and their dedicated stewardship of the communities that they call home. The North Carolina Rule Center's mission is to develop, promote, and implement sound economic strategies to improve the quality of life of rural North Carolinians. With that, we serve the state's 80 rural counties with a special focus on individuals with low to moderate incomes and communities with limited resources. To that end, we see our involvement in the 2020 census as vitally, critically important to supporting the growth and sustainability of our rural communities and its people. The Rule Center understands how crucial an accurate count here it is in North Carolina to the economic viability of rural North Carolinians, especially those in rural communities. So the NC Counts Coalition has identified 15 hard-to-count counties, and we know that 11 of those counties are rural. Over the last few months, we, the Rule Center, has embarked on a Get Out the Count campaign, and specifically in Northampton and Halifax counties, but also across the 80 rural counties that I identified. With that, we have hosted a series of rural community briefings focused on fostering engagement, building capacity, and providing organizational support to rural advocates and leaders. At the 6 briefings that we held, we had over 150 community members and leaders from across Northampton and Halifax County in attendance, over 40 organizational partners representing community coalitions, churches, schools, social services, healthcare, and many, many others who signed on to serve as census information sites. We were able to produce over 10,000 postcards, 100 posters, and hundreds of talking points that these partners have been sharing via social media, via electronic messaging, and even mailings. These groups are really diligent and excited about the opportunity. I think that including the census and an accurate census count, what it means for their communities, they understand the importance and the value of it. You know, with that, the Rule Center will continue to leverage our resources to reach even more rural North Carolinians over this course. Like many of you on the call, we have taken our outreach totally online. This is where we've all kind of been forced to go, but we are pivoting and shifting as we need to. You know, with that obviously comes, I would say, challenges and opportunities. What we know from the data in rural communities is that while a number of rural communities have lost population, we also recognize that there's a growing Hispanic population, particularly a younger population, which we see as a huge opportunity to engage people deeper on the importance of the census. Now, I would say regarding the impact that we have seen on census operations in rural North Carolina, Much of what Stacey's already stated is that we know that, like other communities, our rural communities are also struggling to ensure students have access to food while they're out of school, that they're connecting to online learning when broadband is available and accessible, that our small businesses are challenged with a lack of consumer traffic, and families who are able to hunker down or stand in place as much as possible. And like has already been stated today, we're also using social media to encourage families and communities to use this time, potentially at home, to complete their census, whether online, via mail, or phone. We're saying as easy as 1, 2, 3. And as it relates to the impact of the census outreach efforts, we've heard that organizations that are able to take the operations online are doing that. They're utilizing social media, Facebook Live parties, community planning conference calls, and group chats. Some groups, community groups like churches and neighborhood associations, are using other means of communicating the message around census importance, things such as text messaging and phone banking to reach their members. Other examples that we've heard relate to vulnerable populations, where seniors are reaching out to their own trusted sources like churches and senior centers and healthcare providers to get help with census completion. Now, what we know to be true is that rural North Carolina is resilient and will pivot and shift to meet this need. We find it quite challenging, and it's also its opportunity. I'll close by saying that it is critical that every North Carolinian, rural, urban, and suburban, are counted for the greater good of us all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brandy. And we truly appreciate the Rural Center's partnership and all of the hard work that you all are putting into a complete and accurate census count to make sure that rural North Carolina is counted. At this time, we're very fortunate to be joined by the Census Bureau. So it is my pleasure to introduce you all to Lindy Sudds, the media specialist for the field division in the Atlanta Regional Office, who's going to share with us some updates on the 2020 census operation. Lindy, it's all you.
Thanks, Stacy, and happy Census Day, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. We are certainly having to get more creative in our outreach efforts, but I'm so happy to be with everyone today. And thank you to the partners, first and foremost, not only on this panel, but those who helped organize the call and those on the call currently, because the work you are doing to help support North Carolina is huge and a big deal, and it matters. So here's where we are, right? So most households received their invitation to participate in the 2020 census somewhere between March 12th to the 20th. So most folks should have received that initial invitation. For some households who are in more rural areas that would have received their invitation via delivery from a census taker because they don't get mail to their home, some of those households did not get their invitation before we ceased field operations, but no worries. Whether you've gotten your census invitation or not, the message for everyone in North Carolina remains the same, and that is that you can go online or call via phone today and complete your 2020 census questionnaire. It is so important for so many reasons, and we've heard about a lot of those already from the panelists. So one thing I would remind everyone is not only the importance of the census, but the safety and confidentiality around the census, because we know that some residents are hesitant to participate because of concerns. And so we want everyone in our communities to understand that when you answer the census and you share your data for your household, that data is put under lock and key for 72 years, and it is not shared with anyone nor any other government entities or law enforcement agencies. So please trust that you can respond to the census, stand up and have your household and everyone in it as of today, Census Day, counted, and let's make sure we represent for North Carolina and get our fair share, because that's really what this is all about, is supporting our communities for the next 10 years. So with that, the last thing I would remind everybody is, again, if you have not completed your census, the message is complete it today. It's easier than ever while we're all at home. You can do it online at my2020census.gov, or you can call the toll-free phone line if you don't have connectivity issues. If you have connectivity issues, you can call the phone. as well as households.
Did we lose her? It looks like we lost her. Oh, okay. I'm so sorry, Lindy, but I'm going to try to finish up. Can you hear me? Oh, are you back?
Yes, I'm sorry. Did I lose you? I'm so sorry. Technology is beautiful, right? I'm not sure what the last thing was you heard, but again, I want to make sure I'm mindful of the time for our other panelists, but really the message is clear. If you have not yet responded to the 2020 census, do so today for yourself, for your family, and for your community. And let's get out the count. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lindy, for joining us. And our final panelist of this morning is our data guru from Carolina Demography, Dr. Rebecca Tippett, the Director of Carolina Demography. So Dr. Tippett, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Stacy, and happy Census Day, everyone. So what I'm going to share today are some materials and kind of, we have some great data on how North Carolina is responding to the census. And I'm happy to make these slides available, but we have also written most of these takeaways up in a blog post today. So just know that there are different ways for you to get there. First things first, let's contextualize North Carolina within the nation. When we're looking at the estimated response, so this is estimated, this is the percentage of housing units that we have mail addresses for that have sent their form back to the Bureau. The rate so far in 2020 is about 9 percentage points lower than it was on March 31st in 2010. Of course, there's a lot of things that have changed in 2020 compared to 2010. It's the first online census. We have a variety of different mailing efforts. And of course, there was not a global pandemic occurring 10 years ago. But it's really important that we get this rate up because we know that self-response is both the most accurate form of data that we can collect in the census, and it's also the most cost-effective. And when we have this rate lower, it increases the risk of undercount in our communities. So that's how the nation is doing. North Carolina, as of yesterday, 33% of North Carolina households had responded to the census. That's below the national average of 36.2%. North Carolina is actually ranked 39th among the 50 states. And we are the lowest performing southern state except for West Virginia. So when we look at, just one second, when we look at this, we see 1 in 3 household responses are needed to match the 2010 rate. So historically, we've increased our self-response about just about 1 percentage point each decade from 1990 to 2000 and then to 2010. When we are looking, presently we've had about 33% of housing units respond. We'd need about 32% more housing units to respond just to match the 2010 rate. 1 second. And when we look at how responses have come in daily, we see overall most housing units are responding online. About 28% of responses in North Carolina, 28% of households have responded online. 5% of households have responded by mail or phone. And those mail and phone rates have declined over time, but so have online responses. So we're actually seeing lower response rates this past week than we did the first week of the mailings. So I think that's important because what the research out of CUNY is showing that this is a different trend than we saw maybe the last decade. So the kind of increase in daily self-response is not growing at the same rate. The overall response rate has not increased as much as we would expect based on prior decennial censuses. And when we look at the county distribution, we see that the highest responding counties are kind of concentrated in or around the Triangle and the Triad, as well as kind of outside of Charlotte and near Hickory. But we see really low response kind of in the West and in parts of the coast. And there's actually a pretty strong correlation there with high levels of second homes. Because remember, this is the percentage of housing units who have received an invitation to the census that have completed that census form. So if that house is currently vacant because it is normally occupied in the summer for seasonal use, that housing unit may not respond. So there are some reasons why we may see low response rates in certain communities. So again, I said, the triangle leads in response rates. Orange County is almost 41% of housing units there have responded to the census. And that's more than 3 times as high as the lowest response rate, which is in Graham County at 12.3%. And when we look at those top responding counties, they're disproportionately responding online. Only 0.2% of households in Orange County completed the census by mail or phone. Again, we see that there's probably a strong pattern with lack of broadband, because this is a map. The green areas are places where there's low online response. The blue areas are where there's high online response. And if we started to map internet access and broadband connectivity on those areas, we'd see that that maps pretty closely. It's also important to note that lack of online self-response is not necessarily mean low response. Caswell County has above average response rates, for example, because 24% of their communities have sent in the census by mail or phone. So you see that this map is somewhat the inverse of the other map. So the blue areas here are high mail or phone response rates. And again, we have this as an interactive map on our website today. So this data can be accessed more concretely. I want to go through some of these factors that we had looked at for NC Counts and its partners about some concerns of community characteristics associated with response. And so we're looking now at the average response rate by census tract and the proportion of the census tract that's foreign born. We looked at a variety of factors, but what we saw was that we're actually seeing average higher response rates in higher immigrant tracts. So the census tracts with 5.7 to 9.8% of the population foreign born, or 9.8% or higher, have above average response rates, while those with lower immigrant populations have below average response rates compared to the state. We do see that as the census tract has a higher minority population, so over half of the population identifying as American Indian, Asian, Black, or Latino, that we see lower, kind of below average response rates in those communities. And this may also intersect with that internet connection, because the strongest factor that we're seeing is that in communities that have high internet access, where about 88% or more of housing units have internet at home, they have by far the highest self-response rates, and the internet access is lowest in the census tracts where there's the lowest response. We did also look at the presence of children, and that was not a significant pattern one way or the other. So again, want to note that we are tracking North Carolina specific response rates each week for NC Counts, and you can access that information as well as county profiles at this link. And if you are loving this Zoom background trend and want to promote it at your virtual meetings, we've also made those available for you. So thank you so much, and look forward to questions. Thanks, Stacy.